The phone rang at 6:42 a.m. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, halfway through brewing coffee, watching the Arizona sunrise bleed across the stucco wall behind the cactus bed. I almost didn't answer, figured it was a robocall or a wrong number. But something about the 480 area code made me pick up. "Hello?" A voice, rushed and breathless. "Mr. Delaney? It's Elena. Elena Kessler. I photographed Rachel's baby shower last weekend." "Yes, of course," I said, sitting down slowly. "Is everything all right?" A long pause. "I need you to come to my studio. Today. As soon as you can. And please, come alone." My hand stilled on the coffee mug. "What's this about?" Another pause. "There's something in the pictures. Something I didn't notice at first, but it's not right. I don't want to explain over the phone. Just please. Come. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important." Her voice cracked slightly at the end. Not dramatic. Not rehearsed. Frightened. My first instinct was that someone had hacked her files, maybe one of those data breach scams. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something worse. "I can be there in an hour," I said. "Thank you," she breathed. "And Mr. Delaney, don't tell Rachel." "Not yet." The line went dead. I sat for a moment in the silence, the old house ticking around me. Through the window, I could see the citrus trees in the back, still and gold in the early light. The baby shower had been beautiful. Rachel was glowing. 35 weeks pregnant. The first time she'd smiled like that since Abby died. All those family photos. All those people. A small voice in my head said it was probably nothing. That photographers are dramatic by nature, always looking for stories in shadows. But another voice, the one I trusted more these days, told me to finish my coffee, get dressed, and go find out what the hell Elena had seen. Elena's studio was a converted loft in the arts district, wedged between a yoga studio and a bar that hadn't opened since the pandemic. I parked out front, buzzed the intercom. The door clicked open without a word. She met me just inside, early 30s. Neat braid. Camera strap, still slung across her chest. Her eyes were red. Not like she'd been crying recently, but like she hadn't slept. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice low. "It's back here." I followed her past racks of lighting gear and fabric backdrops to a narrow editing suite. One wall was covered in pinned photos, weddings, couples, maternity shoots. The rest of the room smelled like coffee, nerves, and printer toner. She gestured to the chair beside her workstation. "Please, just watch." She tapped the keyboard. The monitor lit up. The baby shower came to life in still frames. Rachel laughing in the backyard. Sun catching the edges of her baby blue dress. Aunts holding gifts. Kids running under streamers. Me, holding a lemonade. I smiled despite myself. Then she clicked forward. The second folder. "This is where I noticed it," she whispered. I was color correcting when I saw it the first time. In one frame, Rachel opening a box of onesies. A man stands in the far background. Just outside the tent. Not facing the camera. Watching. Maybe a passerby? I said, already knowing better. She clicked again. Another photo. Closer. The same man, partially behind a tree. Then again, behind a group of guests. Almost blending in. His face turned slightly. Just enough to see that he wasn't smiling. Not talking. Just watching. Always watching. "Rachel, do you recognize him?" Elena asked. I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. The last image froze on screen. The man was 5 feet from my daughter. The crowd around her, unaware. But he wasn't blurry anymore. The light had caught his left arm, just below the elbow. A tattoo. Black ink. A cicada. Wings outstretched. My hands went cold. "No," I said finally. I don't recognize him. But I was lying. I'd seen that tattoo before. On my son. The one I'd buried in my mind 8 years ago. The one I'd given up for dead. The tattoo wasn't large, but it was specific black ink, fine-lined, wings flared as if mid-song. A cicada. Not a symbol you see every day, not something easily confused. Jacob got it the summer he turned 19, right after his mother died. Said it represented transformation. I remember asking why he'd want something so ugly on his arm. He told me cicadas lived underground for years, and when they finally came up, they screamed. Back then, I thought it was a phase, something to roll my eyes at. Looking at it now, frozen in a wedding photo, 5 feet from Rachel, I couldn't breathe. You all right? Elena asked. I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just tired. She didn't press. I stared at the screen. My son, maybe, or someone with the same tattoo, the same lanky build, the same stance, left shoulder always slightly forward, like he was bracing against something. Jacob had vanished 8 years ago. Walked out of his rehab program in Prescott, left a note that said nothing except, "Don't wait up." They called me 2 days later when he missed his counseling check-in. After that, nothing. No credit card usage, no social security hits. I filed a missing person report, hired a PI, searched the woods myself the first 2 years. Flagstaff, Jerome, Payson. Every place I thought he might go. Eventually, people stopped asking. You did what you could, they'd say. Sometimes they don't want to be found. Rachel never forgave him. Said he abandoned her. Said she wasn't going to raise a child on ghost stories. I told her I understood, but I never stopped blaming myself. The yelling, the ultimatums, the slammed doors, the way I told him to man up at the funeral when he couldn't stop shaking. I thought I was being strong for both of us. I didn't realize I was hollowing him out. And now, here he was, maybe on the edges of Rachel's baby shower, looking like he'd clawed his way out of the dirt just to see her. The cicada. I leaned back slowly, the room spinning a little. Elena looked like she wanted to ask more, but she stayed quiet. Can you send me these? I said. All the raw files. Metadata too. She nodded. Of course. I already put them on a drive. I left. 10 minutes later, with the flash drive in my pocket, and the ghost of my son etched behind my eyes. The cabin sat at the edge of a forgotten trail outside Flagstaff, 30 miles from anything paved. We hadn't been up there in years. Not since Rachel moved to Phoenix and I sold the truck with 4-wheel drive. I had to rent something just to make the climb. The driveway was a dirt, cut through pine and rock, barely wide enough for one car. At the top, the trees opened like curtains, and there it was. Same weather-worn siding, same sagging roofline. A place that never looked new, even when it was. We bought it when Jacob was 10. Spent every summer there until things fell apart. I unlocked the door with the spare key hidden under the propane tank. It stuck, then gave with a groan. Inside, it smelled like old wood and mice. Dust floated in sunbeams. Nothing looked touched at first. Same coffee can on the stove, same deck of cards on the shelf. But then, in the back bedroom, I saw it. The curtain was askew. The floor had footprints in the dust. Near the old iron cot, a blanket lay bunched on the ground. Not just any blanket. Rachel's. Pale yellow, hand-knit, with white trim. The one she made for the baby and showed off at the shower. Dad, it's soft enough for a cloud, she'd said, holding it against her cheek. I picked it up with both hands. It smelled faintly of smoke and pine. Near the corner, a half-empty water bottle. Granola wrappers. A crumpled pack of American spirits. Cigarette butts piled in an old soup can. Someone had been here recently. Someone who didn't want to be found. but couldn't stay away. I opened the back door and stepped outside. The forest was still. High, whispering trees. A hawk circled far off. It hit me then, not fear, not even anger. Just a kind of quiet certainty. If this was Jacob, and I was nearly sure it was, he hadn't come back for me. He'd come back for Rachel, for the baby. Watching from the edges, I looked out across the trees and spoke softly, to no one. You could have just knocked. Then I went back inside, folded the blanket gently, and sat down on the cot. Waited. Listened. But there was only the wind. She didn't even let me finish the sentence. No, Rachel said, setting her tea down with more force than necessary. Dad. No. Jacob is dead. We were in her kitchen, the afternoon light soft across the tile. The house smelled like lavender and formula. The baby wasn't due for another 4 weeks, but she was already nesting, reorganizing drawers that hadn't moved in years. I held the flash drive in my hand like a weight. I saw him, I said quietly. Or someone who looks too much like him not to be. Same build, same posture. And the tattoo, Rachel, it's the cicada. The exact one. She shook her head. That doesn't mean it's him. There are 1,000 guys with tattoos and unwashed hair. You want to believe he came back, but that doesn't make it real. Why show up to a baby shower? Why not call? Why not walk through the damn door like a normal person? I didn't have an answer. She stood up, crossed her arms over her belly. Dad, I know you feel guilty, but I don't want him near my child. Her voice wavered. You remember what he was like, don't you? Before he disappeared? Screaming in the hallway at 2 a.m, smashing plates because I used the wrong tone? He terrified me. I nodded. I remembered. I also remembered how thin he'd gotten. How his eyes never quite focused. The way he hugged me, like he was bracing for impact. He was sick, I said. That doesn't mean he's still dangerous. Rachel looked away. And it doesn't mean he's not. The baby kicked then, and she placed a hand on her stomach automatically. I can't go back there, Dad. Not now. Not when I'm about to bring a new life into this world. He's part of your past. I'm your future. Her words were final, edged with something unspoken. A boundary I wasn't meant to cross. I wanted to argue, to explain what I'd found at the cabin. But I saw the look in her eyes, the one her mother used to get when she'd already packed the suitcase in her mind. So, I said nothing, just nodded, and slipped the flash drive back into my jacket pocket. Let me know if you need anything, I said, and let myself out the door. The shelter off 7th Avenue didn't have a sign, just a battered red door and a hand-painted number above it. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and wet socks. A volunteer in a green hoodie pointed me toward the intake desk. Jay? The man behind the counter said, flipping through a logbook. Yeah, we've had a Jay. Comes and goes. Quiet. Kind of jumpy. He paused. Is he in trouble? No, I said. I think he's my son. The man looked up, his expression softening. You the dad? I nodded. He mentioned you once. Said he used to build decks with his old man. Said you had hands like bricks. I felt something catch in my chest. Did he ever leave a number? A name? Nah. No one here does. But he's been by this month. He reached under the counter and pulled out a beat-up spiral notebook. This was in the lost and found. Could be his. I opened it carefully. The first page was nothing scribbles, ink stains, a drawing of a bird with no wings. But the second page stopped me cold. My daughter's name. Rachel. Written over and over in uneven black pen. And under that, a date. May 12. Her due date. I turned more pages. Diagrams. Math problems that went nowhere. Bible verses, half written then crossed out. A note in the margin. She'll be safer without me. But I need to see her first. I closed the notebook, hands trembling. You sure this is his? I asked. The man shrugged. We don't get many guys writing about Rachel and drawing cicadas in the margins. I left a number, asked them to call me if Jay came back. Then I stepped into the street, blinking against the sun, and looked out across the lot like I might see him there slouched against the wall, lighting a cigarette, watching the world like it didn't quite belong to him, but the sidewalk was empty, and the ghosts kept walking just beyond reach. I woke at 2:11 a.m. The digital clock's red glow, the only light in the room. Something had pulled me from sleep. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one. The house was too quiet. I sat up, listening. The air felt wrong. Heavy. I slipped on my slippers, grabbed my phone, and walked down the hallway, toward the guest room, the nursery Rachel had set up at my house, in case she needed to stay the night after the baby came. The door was cracked open. I knew I'd closed it earlier. A thin line of moonlight cut across the carpet. My heartbeat ticked in my throat. When I pushed the door wider, the curtain fluttered, pushed inward by the warm night breeze. The window was open. Fully. I scanned the room: dresser, rocking chair, tiny bookshelf with children's books Rachel bought last month. Nothing out of place. No signs of forced entry. No footprints on the carpet. But when I stepped closer to the crib, I saw it. Lying neatly on top of the pale yellow blanket, the same blanket I'd found at the cabin, was a photograph. I picked it up with careful fingers. A baby shower picture. Rachel laughing, holding a gift bag. Guests, blurred in the background. And there, near the edge of the frame, barely visible, unless you knew where to look, Jacob. The same figure Elena had shown me, watching from the fringe like a shadow stitched into the scene. My throat tightened. I turned the photo over. 5 words, written in a shaky hand I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. I would never hurt her. I just wanted to see my niece. I sank onto the edge of the crib, the wood creaking under my weight. A strange mix of fear, relief, and grief knotted inside me. He had been here, in my home, close enough to touch the crib, close enough to breathe the same air. If he'd wanted to do harm, he could have. But he hadn't. He left a message instead. A promise or a plea. I wasn't sure. I looked out the open window, out into the night. The yard lay still, illuminated by the dull streetlight. Nothing moved. No sound. I closed the window gently, locked it, and lowered the photo to my lap. Jacob, I whispered to the empty room. Why didn't you just knock? The darkness didn't answer. Elena called the next afternoon. I was in my workshop, pretending to organize screws but really replaying the night over and over. The open window. The note. The photo. Her voice was tight, brittle. Mr. Delaney, I found something. You need to come. Now. I didn't argue. 20 minutes later, I was in her editing suite again. She didn't offer coffee this time. Didn't sit. Just hovered behind me as she loaded a video file onto the monitor. This wasn't mine, she said. My second shooter sent it this morning. He thought it was just test footage. The screen flickered, then stabilized. A shaky, handheld shot of the baby shower backyard. Bright sun, music in the background. Then the camera shifted, panning past the guests, landing accidentally on the tree line. And there he was. Jacob. Half hidden behind a pine trunk, face thinner than I remembered, eyes wide and glassy, lips moving. The audio crackled, then caught his voice low, broken, as if he hadn't spoken aloud in weeks. She looks just like Rachel did. He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on my daughter, as she opened presents. Tell Dad I'm sorry. I felt the words hit like a physical blow. Elena's hand hovered near her mouth. I didn't move. Couldn't. Jacob looked older than 33. Closer to 50. Hair uneven, beard patchy, clothes hanging off him like they belonged to someone else. But it was him, my son, alive, watching from the outside of a life he no longer believed he had a place in. The video ended with a sudden jerk as the cameraman shifted back toward the party. Silence filled the room. Thick. Suffocating. "I didn't know what to do," Elena whispered. "I'm so sorry." I stood slowly, feeling every year of my age. "You did the right thing." Outside, the sun was too bright, too warm. I walked to my truck and sat there with the door open, letting the heat wash over me. Jacob was alive, but he was unraveling, lost in some world between guilt and longing. Close enough to watch his sister. Close enough to touch the blanket. Close enough to whisper apologies into a stranger's camera. I started the engine, gripping the wheel. I had found him. But now I had to face the harder question. When I did, would he recognize the father he ran from, or the one he was trying to return to? I drove back to the cabin just after sunrise. The woods were still wet, with early light. Steam rising from the soil like breath. I hadn't been back since I found the blanket, but I brought what I needed now. A thermos of coffee, a sandwich wrapped in wax paper, an envelope with a letter inside, and an old photo, the last one we ever took as a family. July 2007. The three of us at Canyon Lake. Rachel in the middle, 10 years old, gap-toothed and beaming. Jacob off to the side, arms crossed, half smiling. Abby behind the camera, yelling for him to stop squinting. I remember thinking we looked like any other family. We weren't. But for a second, we pretended well enough. The cabin door groaned like it always did. I stepped inside, laid the envelope on the cot where I'd found his things, sat down for a while, waited, listened. Nothing. Just wind threading through pine needles and the ticking of the metal roof expanding in the sun. The letter wasn't long. I told him I'd seen him, told him I knew, told him he didn't have to be alone anymore. And then I wrote what I should have said 8 years ago. Come, 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 come home, come home, come home. Or let me help you. I failed once. I won't fail again. I signed it, Dad. Not Michael. Not your father. Just Dad. I left the coffee and the sandwich beside the envelope. Then I walked out and didn't look back. The next day, the food was gone. The letter, too. The photo left behind. I waited. A week. Then another. Nothing. No call. No knock at the door. Just quiet. But every night, I'd check the locks, walk past the nursery, glance once at the window, and I'd keep my phone charged, volume on, just in case. He was out there. That much I knew. Whether he'd come back, that part was still up to him. The envelope was taped to my front door, just below the peephole. No postage, no return address, just my name, printed carefully across the front, in all caps. Dad. I found it at 6:03 a.m. on a Wednesday. Cool morning air, birds starting up in the hedges. I peeled it free slowly, like whatever was inside might vanish if I moved too fast. Inside was a photo, recent. Jacob, looking thinner than I remembered, but cleaner. Hair cut, beard trimmed, a flannel shirt buttoned to the collar like he used to wear in high school. In his hands, a small toy, a wooden rabbit with wheels, hand-carved. He used to make them in the garage when he was a kid. One for every cousin, every birthday, every neighbor's baby. He always left them unfinished, raw pine, no paint. I turned the photo over. 5 words. Same uneven handwriting. Not yet. But I'm here. Beneath it. And she's safe. Thank you, Dad. My legs gave out. And I sat right there on the porch steps, the photo held against my chest. Not crying, not speaking, just breathing like it was something I had to remember how to do. He was still out there. Still lost in the spaces between past and present. But he was trying. Watching from the edges, protecting her the only way he knew how. He wasn't ready to come home. But he wasn't running either. That night, I didn't tell Rachel. Didn't show her the picture. She had enough to worry about, enough to carry. And maybe one day, if he was ready, he'd bring it to her himself. Until then, I opened the drawer in my nightstand and placed the photo inside, next to the old Canyon Lake one. Then I walked to the porch, unscrewed the dead bulb from the front light, and replaced it with a fresh one. Turned the switch. A warm circle of gold spilled across the driveway. I left it on, just in case. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.